Shalom, I'm Dr. Deanna Dye with Foundations in Torah. We're going to talk about the 5 loaves and the 2 fish from John chapter 6. John chapter 6 tells us that there was a festival of Pesach coming up. The festival of Passover was coming up. So the question is, where will we be able to buy bread? And the reality is, if they had been cleaning the leaven out of their homes, there wouldn't be any bread to purchase. And so the cleaning out of the leaven meant that the bread would be unleavened bread. And we see that a young man comes along with 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 fish. And of course, we're coming into the season of the barley harvest. That is Yom HaBikurim, and then the counting of the Omer, the counting of the barley, which is the first fruits. So we also know that there are 5,000 men that are there, and that Yeshua took the loaves, the 5 loaves, and he made the baracha, or the blessing. And it tells us there that they ate their fill, and they were told by Yeshua to gather the leftover pieces. And so they gathered the leftovers and they filled 12 baskets with the pieces from the 5 barley loaves. So in order to understand this chapter in a little more detail, we have to go to the book of Ruth. So Ruth 2:14 is our key here. It tells us, Boaz said to Ruth, at mealtime, time of eating, come here, eat of the bread, and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed parched grain to her, and she ate and was full, and had some left over. Now the story of Ruth takes us from the barley harvest to the wheat harvest, from Yom HaKippurim all the way to Shavuot. What's interesting here is that it talks about her dipping her bread in the vinegar is the same word as we have for the cleaning out of the leaven, which is chametz. And in this case, the vinegar is chometz, which we know was given to Yeshua when he was hanging on the tree. So this idea of mealtime and coming here and eat was speaking of approaching royalty. And this idea of her eating and she was full and that she had some left over is the key to understanding John chapter 6. Now this is a quote from the Talmud from Shabbat 113b. And it says, and she ate, meaning in this world she ate, and she sufficed, or was full, speaking of the days of the Messiah, and she had some left over, speaking of the world to come. So this is a midrash, a commentary on this particular verse in Ruth. Now I think it'll help us understand John 6 a little better. So there were 5 loaves, and let me just mention this about the 5 loaves. We do believe they were unleavened. Of course, they needed to get the leaven out at that time. Also, the unleavened bread on the table of showbread, we believe that was unleavened. That's according to Josephus. So every Shabbat, the priests traded out 12 loaves of bread and put it on the table of showbread in the temple. What's interesting is, though, when that particular week's showbread was finished, they would put it on a table outside in the porch. The high priest was given 5 of the loaves to eat, while the 7 loaves went to the remaining priests. So here we have this number 5 again, and the high priest eating the 5 loaves, and those 5 loaves being unleavened bread. We can also read in 1 Samuel 21:13, we remember David when he went into the tabernacle in Nov, he ate 5 loaves of bread. Again, we believe that bread was unleavened. And so the bread was connected with the high priest and the 5 loaves. And this is all pointing us to the Messianic kingdom, because the number 5 is generally associated with that kingdom. So basically we're talking about the spiritual food then for the whole house of Israel. So I hope that made sense. We'll see you next time. Shalom.